Randone here. I got my man himself, aka Mr. FC Wiz, aka Mr. Margarita Poppy.
Yeah, baby.
It's Manny Laura. What's up, my man?
What's up, dude? Always fun to be on with you, man. A lot of stuff to talk about. A lot of uncomfortable spots, I'd say, on this slate, right? Guys, I'm not used to playing, but it's week 6, baby. Time to tackle it and see if we can make some money.
Mr. Margarita Poppy. Dude, I mean, speaking of players that, you normally don't think you're going to play, I mean, how much Will Fuller did you have last week?
I had about 20 to 25%.
Okay, and how much DJ Shark did you have?
Almost nothing.
Almost nothing. I mean, this is and these are the types of plays that, obviously they make a difference. And we're going to get into some great plays this week. Before we start getting into it, what we're going to do, we're switching up a little bit different this time. We're going to Fantasy Cruncher for a few questions that were asked throughout the week. And then we're going to go into the main slate. 10 games, but there's a lot to talk about. But first, you guys, as you know, our sponsor, Yahoo Sports Daily Fantasy. They got some nice tournaments going over there this week. They got the $1 Million Baller, $30K to first place. But as you know, if you sign up, you get $30 in rewards points. All you got to do is go to Osmo.com. Go to the NFL section. I think now it's updated where you can click on one of the links to sign up. Use the code NFL Strategy. It'll get you $30 in rewards points for Yahoo. That can get you 3 entries into the $1 Million Baller tournament. So go ahead and check that out. Manny, week 6 is here. With Fantasy Cruncher, a lot of people always switch it up. They're struggling one week with it. Next week they're understanding it. One of the biggest things this week, and I think you went over it in the show and you did a great idea, or you did a great way of really presenting it to us, was unique players per position. And you broke down essentially how more effective is it, and you did it with the lineup study,
right,
of having a running back in the flex as compared to a wide receiver and tight end. And you went through it, and what performed best was a running back.
Right. So I think it's a little bit site dependent too, right? Like if you're playing on a full point PPR site, obviously you want to take advantage of that, and receivers are the best way to do that. Well, pass catchers, right? I guess tight ends will also be in there. But for example, a site that I don't know is half point PPR, say like a FanDuel or something, like if you're aiming for touchdowns that way, because you obviously can't aim for catches, they're not worth nearly as much. You'd try to go for running back a little bit more and try to establish a floor, right? Like same thing for maybe quarterback on FanDuel, right? Can you still pay down like you do on other sites? There's no bonuses for quarterback, right? So it's actually really difficult I wouldn't say difficult, just a different way of building lineups per se, to where your player pools probably won't get that big because the upside for other guys, just pure pass catchers, probably isn't there. The upside of playing maybe a cheap quarterback to fit in more guys, maybe a guy like, it happened with Bridgewater last week, but what if Bridgewater this week doesn't score any touchdowns, which is a true possibility? Maybe one. Does that do enough on those half-point PPR sites or those sites where you need touchdowns? Probably not. So for me, it's probably site-dependent. But even if it is, like I advise anyone to just go into FC, go into lineup study, and just start studying. Just run a bunch of different style of crunches. Stack, don't stack, game stack, go 4s, 3s. Try tight ends only at the flex, wide receivers only at the flex, running backs. Try everything. See what works the most and or what works best, and then go through different slates and try it out. I think the more you do that, the more you start crunching, the more you see how an optimizer works, the better you'll be off. So we did that yesterday. We did that a few times during this week and came up with some pretty good nuggets. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think this week I've learned the most in Fantasy Cruncher than probably I have since I originally got introduced to it. And, Alex Baker was teaching me a lot of great things with it. And you made a great point about site dependency. And it's a huge factor because, that not only is the PPR, that half a point per reception, a big difference because you're getting a full point on DK, but you're also getting the bonuses for the 100 yards receiving. So what's interesting about this is, on DK, it's way more valuable to have a wide receiver if you choose to do so in the flex as compared to FanDuel, because as we know on FanDuel, half point per PPR, also no bonus. But I also wanted to point out, kind of what was true to your testimonial about running back in the flex on FanDuel. I looked up the $3,300 Gladiator this past week on lineup study, and what it showed was 88 out of 100 teams in a $3,300 buy-in had a running back in the flex.
Yep.
And I mean, these are big hitting sharks that are playing. So, kind of to help people understand, especially if you're playing cash and it's more of a close-knit tournament, maybe like a 50-50 double up or 100 people, the optimal play here is a running back a majority of the time in the flex position.
Yeah, for sure. You're aiming for touchdowns, right? And it's touchdowns we know are super variant, right? Like it's very random. It's not something we could project with accuracy. For a long time, Julio Jones kept having great games and just could never get in the end zone, right? So to kind of peg that receiver or multiple receivers on FanDuel, or say that can get that touchdown is pretty difficult. You also have to factor in that on all sites you play 3 receivers by default. If you then choose to play a 4th receiver at the flex, that's 4 receivers you need to nail nearly perfectly to win some of these tournaments, to where you're only forced to play 2 running backs. If you play a 3rd, great, you'll play 3 running backs, 3 receivers. So you're kind of even there, and you don't have to try and peg all 4 receivers that went ham, because especially on that site, very hard for that to happen, right? Very hard for receivers to have that much upside because of the PPR and no bonuses. So for me, it's not so much going for the floor. It's kind of predicting touchdowns, and if that's what you're doing, I mean, running back has to be the answer. So yeah, it was a pretty solid week in that regard. I think we learned a ton. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're wondering how to utilize that specific approach in the advanced options, if you have Fantasy Cruncher, it'll come up on the general settings, flex position. You have the opportunity to click which position you want to show up in the flex and which positions you don't want. Next, final thing that we'll do with Fantasy Cruncher is unique players per position. Excuse me. I thought that this was very informative this week when you went over it, talking about how much variance we could switch up our lineups based on utilizing unique players per position in the general settings for the advanced options tab. Kind of just, if you can, elaborate on why it's effective to utilize this specific tool in Fantasy Cruncher, because we had a few people yesterday talk about, do I need to utilize this, and is this effective, and how much of each position should I make unique if I'm doing 4 or 5 uniques per lineup?
Yeah, for sure. This one's an interesting one because I think it's very useful, but if you use it the wrong way, I think you can probably get in trouble with it, right? If you differentiate too much, you'll run into some errors where you can't compute lineups of a certain stack if you're forcing a stack or whatever. So it's a very delicate feature, but one that if you use well, I think you can diversify pretty well, right? So if you go to the general tab under advanced options, you'll see the unique players per position right under where the regular unique players per lineup is. And you could say, I want 1 unique at running back every position, 1 unique maybe at wide receiver, and then maybe a different tight end every position. You can if you wanted to. The thing with that is the normal way uniques work, right, is they're always going to prioritize the defense. And I've spoken about this a ton, right, because they're the lowest projected player on the slate on every lineup for you. So by default, it'll just swap out the defense first, and then it'll swap out the next guys that it has to swap out. So for example, if you have 3 uniques per lineup, it's almost like 2 uniques because 1 is almost always going to be the defense. Then maybe you get the flex will be different every time. And then, maybe a receiver. That, or maybe a tight end. That for me isn't really 3 uniques because I didn't differentiate all that much. I differentiated a defense and then 2 different players. So if you wanted to kind of have more control over who you're changing in and out of your lineups, yeah, using unique players per lineup is probably the best way. And then if I had to recommend, I probably wouldn't go higher than 1 for running back. I don't think you want 2 different running backs in every single lineup. I think that's too much. I'd say you can try to push it a 2 because of the flex. So if you're trying to receiver, I think you can push it a 2 because there might be a receiver at flex. And tight end, I probably wouldn't even change at all. So I'd probably just use unique players per running back and per wide receiver. I think receiver, you can maybe go to 2. Other than that, I wouldn't go higher at all.
Yeah, I think the higher you go, it really just doesn't even give you not only optimal lineups, but you're not really building a lineup that you can really see as being, right, I guess, highly optimal in the tournament. Right. So yeah, I mean, that's one thing I think people were trying to figure out is, does this hurt me or does it benefit me? But if it does benefit me, how do I go and really utilize it? So for me personally, I agree with you, and I think that the more you try to add to it, it's not going to be effective, but less is more with it. But it definitely can give you a difference maker in constructing your lineups.
For sure, 100%.
Week 6 is going to be very interesting because there's only 10 games. We've seen 12 games, usually on a slate. Last week we had the 2 4:00 games. That was horrible. Now they gave us 4, so now we could kind of have a better sweat because I think once we knew Aaron Jones last week went off, a lot of people were done.
Yeah.
But first game, we don't have Christian McCaffrey on this slate. First game that we're going to go into has a 46 over under, Manny. Seattle's a 1.5 point favorite on the road going into Cleveland. We saw a Monday night Cleveland Browns team that could not stop the run of San Francisco 49ers, which is completely dismantled at the defensive line. Talk about this game. Right now we have Tyler Lockett showing up pretty high in the Awesemo projections. Do we see any love in this game with a 46.5 over under?
Yeah, I think you can go to this game for sure. I think there's clear paths to game stacking if you wanted to go that way, right? For Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, you'd easily go Lockett. I think now with the way Disley has played, you can either choose Disley or Metcalf. I hate going to a guy like Disley because I just refuse to think upside is there, right? But he's definitely posted up numbers. I think people are kind of overreacting to the Disley stuff because he's only had one 20-point game or higher, right? And that's when he scored 2 touchdowns against Pittsburgh. Everything else has been 18, and 12. So for me, it's he's all right, but I think I want more upside. So maybe Metcalf might be my play if I wanted to go here. I think if I had to rank quarterbacks, Wilson would probably be just outside my top 5. If not, I'd have him 5th. And then Baker on the other side is just, man, they've been awful, dude. They've been like, is it me or this team is just extremely overrated right now? They're just not playing well. Baker's not seeing the field well. The protection just hasn't been there. Like, I don't know, like Odell's just disappeared, it feels like. I mean, I want to go back here because I feel they're going to have virtually no ownership. And this could be a pretty decent spot. If you look at the Seattle defense, ranked in the bottom third of the league, especially against the pass. So I think I like this, but man, it's scary given how Baker and them have played. Thankfully, it's in Cleveland, not in Seattle, making it a little bit easier for me. But I will have exposure to this game. Probably not my favorite game.
You know, what's confusing about me is with Baker is so his completion percentage is way down from last year. I think it's down about 8 or 9%. And one interesting stat is when he releases the ball within 2.5 seconds, he's way more effective than holding on to it. And so when you're holding on to it, I think you just mentioned a great point, is he not seeing the field? Is he not being able to really read coverages? Or are the defenses having a type of scheme where the wide receivers are just locked down and there's nowhere to throw? Because after that 2.5 second threshold, he's not only very inaccurate, but I mean, he's turning over the ball. And right. So that affects you both ways in fantasy. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know what to expect right now. I know what we've seen out of a Seahawks defense that is very vulnerable to the passing game. I think we saw that against the Rams as well. But if I'm thinking of what I like here, I think the Browns need to go where they're probably most effective right now, and that's the running game with Chubb. Try to open it up, the passing game, with getting some great first downs, with establishing the run. But outside of that, I mean, I don't know if I can trust Odell Beckham or Landry because of how Baker Mayfield's playing.
Yeah, I really want to go there because I feel like these guys will be virtually unowned. And listen, I've seen way worse spots in the league than against Seattle at home, right? And I'll gladly take Baker, Odell, and Jarvis if they're not going to be owned. The problem is, man, they just don't look good right now. How do you have 8 completions in an entire game? Baker Mayfield just went 8 for 22 with 100 yards on the dot. Did absolutely nothing. 2 interceptions. I mean, I can't even do that if I try. If I was in the NFL, I can't do that if I tried. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, man. So you can only go up. I guess that's a good part, but man, they don't look good right now. So just very little GPP interest is all for me.
Yeah, I do like Odell just a tiny bit, especially if I think – the way I think this game is looking, in my opinion, the Browns are very weak against the run. I could see Seattle coming out and really establishing Chris Carson if he's healthy. I know right now he has a shoulder injury. But if I could see the Browns getting down and then seeing them abandon the run game and seeing them throw a little bit more, which, I mean, is not something I'm excited about. But I do like Odell because his price has continued to drop. And I feel like based on what we've seen as of late, him not necessarily playing to his talent, people are dropping off on him in ownership, which obviously is, like you said, low owned, high upside, sometimes benefits in a GBP. So I could definitely see going that route. But other than that, any love for the Seahawks offense?
Yeah, maybe just some Carson. I think if he's healthy, good to go, I think you have to go there, right? He's just been the volume has just been through the roof for him. Very, very little passing game work, but it's I guess it's serviceable for a running back of his caliber. But 20 plus carries the last 2 games out there, and you have to love that, right? 22 and 27 against the Rams. So yeah, I absolutely love that. And then if they're up, even better, right? Favorable game script. So yeah, I do like Chris Carson. I think he's probably my top 4 or 5 running backs this week.
The next game, obviously, is the highest over-under on the slate, 55 points. KC, a 4.5-point favorite at home against the Texans. We just saw the Texans dismantle Atlanta. We saw Will Fuller just absolutely go off. This game has a lot of ownership. This game has a lot of talking points. Love for you to break down first the Texans side, and then we'll go into the Chiefs side after.
Yeah, so this one's interesting. What do we do with DeAndre Hopkins is always my question, because you feel like he is the best. Everyone feels like he's the best receiver in the league. I think that's the consensus. But then he goes out, gets double teamed, and he disappears for 3-4 weeks in a row after the first big week he had of the season, right? So it's actually frustrating, not even getting double-digit targets, something we saw, I think, almost every week last year. And now it's just like, all right, well, if people are going to keep doubling him, do we go to Will Fuller? We saw the double last week, and they went to Fuller pretty much the entire game. If that happens this week, you'd like to think Fuller can have another big game, but the price tag has come up just a little bit across the industry. At least on DK, he was $1,500 cheaper last week. He is no longer that price anymore. DeAndre Hopkins doesn't really come down in price too often, right? Like he started in the 8,000s on DK, but now he's down towards the mid 7s, but that's where he probably should be the way he's been playing. And then if you look at the matchup, listen, KC scores a lot, but they also give up a lot, right? I think last week, and this might be interesting, last week we saw just how vulnerable they were against the run, and we saw Max just run all over them. I think they could probably do the same here if they had a decent running back. They keep giving Hyde touches, so I guess Hyde has a decent matchup, but for me, it's what does the team actually do? I feel like they could give another 20 carries here to Hyde and probably not get in a shootout. If that's the case, some of these guys underperform. So I do like the game. I love the total. Obviously, I love the Chiefs side. Playing the Houston side, I think, is a little bit tricky, given the question marks as to what the workload can look like for some of these guys. But if they start running the ball, I probably wouldn't be surprised, and all of a sudden makes Hyde interesting for tournaments. Not saying that he's a top play by any means.
So I saw an interesting stat for Deshaun Watson this year. Under 2.5 seconds in the pocket, and he releases the ball. He completes a pass 87% of the time. Wow. If he holds on to it, it drops significantly to, I think, about 59, if I'm correct. I could be wrong, but I know it's in the 50s. And outside of that, the reason why I'm mentioning this is because the Chiefs, as a defensive unit, are one of the lowest percentages in the league when it comes to applied pressure even when they're not blitzing. So it's just pressure on the offensive front, even outside of blitzing. And this is what making me wonder about the approach with this offense for the Texans. Is you said Hyde. Do they run 20 carries with Hyde, or are they going to have an offense where they just come out and they just sling it in the passing game? What we saw on Sunday night was a little bit interesting. I think Brissett is a completely different quarterback than Watson, so we're not going to compare this here.
Right.
But I think the mobility of Watson is going to hurt this Chiefs team drastically, especially if there's not anyone open. I feel like his running game could be a huge difference maker here, and I think that's why he presents so much upside as well, because he's that dual threat. But I feel like this might be the game for Hopkins.
Yeah, it very well could be. I hope it is. I haven't been a ton of season long, but even for DFS, I think he's shaping up to be a pretty decent play. If you're looking at going between Fuller and Hopkins, I'd probably go Hopkins. I think it was easily Fuller last week. I think it's probably easily Hopkins this week. Also on the KC side, does Tyreek play? Obviously, that's a huge thing. Watkins still not practicing or whatever. I think that's obviously significant. But if they get Tyreek back, how viable is Tyreek this week, right? And so many moving parts. I think we still have to wait on one side, the KC Chiefs side, what really happens with who they're going to have out there to see who we're going to stack with Mahomes, because I think, for me at least, I just stack Mahomes every single week. Doesn't even matter who he's playing, right? If that's the case, then sure, I do want him and Tyreek and Kelsey or whoever. But if not, yeah, I don't know, man. It's kind of scary the way the Colts played them last week, and if teams take a page out of that book, it's It's just going to be a really run-heavy game for the Texans, even though they have 2 stud pass catchers. So this one's a tricky one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to wide receiver ones for the Chiefs defense, they're only surrendering 2.3 receptions per game to wide receiver ones. So that, I mean, a little bit that scares me, but I mean, at the end of the day, talent is superior to any type of defensive scheme. And I think Hopkins has that talent. But I think, I mean, we've always, the last couple of weeks with the Chiefs, we've kind of played this game plan of, well, Galladay 2 weeks ago was going to be down. So we're going to go ahead and play the opposing wide receiver in this instance. Right. And so going to what you just said, you could see yourself playing Mahomes and Kelsey or whatever. And then if Tyreek's out, I mean, it makes these, wide receivers more valuable. In this instant, would a game stack be more, I would say, optimal than just rostering one player from, one each side or 2 players? How do you feel as far as the roster construction? Is it more valuable to go more one-offs here, or do you need more pieces to this game because of the upside of the over-under and the talent in this game as well?
Yeah, so I always favor the game stacks for sure, but on one side, it's always tough to do it, man. Like Patrick Mahomes being the highest priced quarterback always, and then, Kelsey's always the highest priced tight end, and then if Tyreek comes back, he's among the top priced receivers still. So it's so tough to kind of fit them in and then still have good players around them to the point where I think it's almost always, you want to play them, just can you fit them in? That's the real question. For me this week, you can barely. So I do have some shares of this offense, but it's more Deshaun Watson game stacks to where Fuller and Hopkins are my main guys. And if I want to run it back with one of Kelsey, Tyreek, or Watkins, depending who's playing, then yeah, that'll be my thing. But it's so hard always from the KC side to do it. So I love game stacks. It just KC needs to come down in price just a tad bit for me.
I mean, in the last 2 games, Mahomes has thrown 1 touchdown. Yep. So
no, it's real.
Now he has an ankle situation, and we don't know the mobility of him. So this game is very interesting, but I feel like this game can make or break a slate because of the power that it presents.
For sure.
The next game, I don't think can make or break a slate, or it could. Redskins at Dolphins, your Miami Dolphins. Not even a favorite here against, I think, is probably the worst team in the NFL in the Redskins. But then again, I could be wrong here. I'm not sure. 3.5-point favorites on the road, 41 over under. There was some talk on Twitter yesterday about Adrian Peterson being highly owned in cash. And I just want to talk, I know we talk mostly tournaments, but, first talking in this regard, is Adrian Peterson even in consideration based on what we heard about Callahan saying we got to run more, we need more run attempts? Is this a legit play?
Listen, I hate both of these teams, man. Miami's my team, but my goodness, we're awful. Washington is equally as awful. Now to start playing any one of these guys just because they play each other, I don't know. Like AP, what does he get? 10 to 12 carries a game, if that. If they're ever in the lead, he'll get more, but they're never in the lead. Do they win this week, or do they have the lead this week? I think that'll determine a lot. But how can you say with certainty, right? Both these teams are awful. If I knew and if I trusted Vegas enough to say that, yeah, the Redskins are 3-point favorites here on the road, then yeah, AP makes a ton of sense. And at that price tag, for sure, 100%. But if they're not leading, which is still, in my opinion, a strong possibility, then what? He gets the same 10, 11, 12 carries? Even against the Dolphins, like, I'm not interested in that. Remember, here's something I always do. It's for tournaments, I still need to score 20 to 25 fantasy points, probably at every position, right? And if that's the case, am I just trying to play, a salary relief play in Adrian Peterson? Because that's all he is. You're not actually playing him because you think he can go for 120 and 2 touchdowns. I mean, you're playing him because he's, in the 4,000s. He lets you afford an extra top-tier receiver if you wanted to, or a top-tier tight end, or maybe a top-tier quarterback, and he won't kill you or whatever. So maybe some cash games. But to me, that's I don't know what the upside is realistically. I don't know. I currently right now I do not have much Adrian Peterson at all. So no.
I mean, it's all it is a stretch play. I mean, sure. We have a guy that, okay, he's had 10 attempts, 12 attempts, 11 attempts, 7 attempts, 25 yards, 37 yards, 28 yards, 18 yards. So you mean to tell me that, we're going to be excited about a guy who's averaging 2.5 yards per carry, and let's say he gets an extra 5 carries. What does that do for us? He's not getting in the end zone. There's really not much upside here. He's not someone like maybe Josh Jacobs, who, we kind of touched on last week in regards to he's someone who has more upside and more value, has more of an explosiveness to him, has more of a chance to get into the end zone. I don't think that's the case here. I just don't see it. So if you want to play him, I mean, that's fine for salary relief. And you can, like you said, upgrade at a different position and pay up more to maybe get like a Hopkins, or an Ezekiel Elliott, whatever the case may be. But when it comes to him getting more work on the ground, that's nothing to be excited about.
Of course. I totally agree. I mean, just no upside for me. I don't know. Bad team, bad everything on that team. It's not. I was gonna say maybe there's just bad everything. Obviously, no PPR upside either. So
now on the contrary, what about Chris Thompson? Is he in any way interesting in this matchup?
So the thing for me is you love Chris Thompson every week because they're down every week, and when they play catch up, he's just the garbage time king, right? He gets all the dump offs in those 2-minute drills. That's how he gets, I'd say, 80% of his points. I'm not even sure if here's the thing, we can project every single week when they're going to trail. This might be the only week where they might have a lead for a portion of this game. And if that's the case, it affects Chris Thompson because I think he's heavily game script dependent. So I don't even want to go there either. It's a game where it's two really bad teams, so you think someone might have a path to a good game here, but not even, dude. Like these teams, I'm so used to them losing that I know what happens. What happens when one of these guys start winning? Like it's gonna be so weird. So no, I'm not really there either.
I mean, the thing is that there's no talent on the offensive end.
Correct. There's nothing. There's nothing you want.
So I mean, we can't even be excited about a team that's horrible and has a superstar that maybe we can say, you know what, this is a great matchup for him. But I mean, in this instance, that's not the case. So if you want to get cute with one of the wideouts, maybe, I mean, Preston Williams or, Devontae Parker, I mean, that's great. I mean, obviously we know Washington's one of the worst passing defenses in the league. But, I mean, come on, man. Like, if you're looking to win a GBP, I don't think a player from either of these sides is going to be in that lineup.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've seen the Drake argument, right? He's getting the bulk of snaps. Balaj is almost phased out already completely. So it's pretty much Drake's backfield for now. I know Walton has seen, an uptick and they want to involve him a little bit more. But what if Miami has the lead? Does Drake get more involved and get more touches, right? If you saw the last 2 weeks, he's had 12 carries and 9 carries respectively, and then 6 and 5 targets in the passing game. We're talking almost 20 touches for Drake, or at least potential touches, giving the targets for Drake. So maybe Drake works, but again, what's the realistic upside for Drake? And can Miami score? Does Miami have the lead? All question marks that I don't think anyone could answer definitively. So tournaments maybe, but again, I don't feel incredibly enthused about the Miami side either.
Man, we just gave the Miami game like 5 minutes of airtime. It's probably the most they're going to get all day, all weekend.
Probably.
Next game, Eagles-Vikings. Completely different type of talk here. 44 over-under. Minnesota 3-point favorites. I wrote a tweet out this morning in regards to the Eagles' run D that I saw this morning. I thought it was an interesting stat. Dalvin Cook's projected to be one of the highest owned players this slate, as he should. I mean, the talent level is just superior to amongst any of the other running backs. Right. But the Eagles' run D is actually one of the best in the league. Fewest rushing yards in the NFL allowed, only giving up 3.2 yards per carry. And on top of that, they've stuffed 32% of opponents' runs at or behind the line of scrimmage, which is best in the league. And I want to point this out because I want you to kind of just break down Cook. But then I would love to talk about this passing game that I saw maybe came to life a little bit as far as Thielen is concerned. And Cousins looked great this past weekend against the Giants. So let's talk about Cook, and then let's segue into that passing game with the Vikings.
Yeah, for sure. So Cook, I think the way he's looked this season, I almost want to say he is matchup proof, man. That's how good he's been. He's been unreal. And doesn't matter the price tag, doesn't matter the matchup, doesn't matter the splits, whether it's at home or where. Like he's just been great, right? Another 100-yard game last time out against the Giants. And if he doesn't do it there, he'll do it in the passing game. He's seen 6 catches each of the last 2 games, which for me is obviously significant in PPR sites. So yeah, the price tag has come up to the highest point in the season so far, the highest point in his career so far. He's never been anywhere near the 8K range throughout any point in his career. So kind of weird to see him here, but definitely worth it. The thing for me is how good really is the Eagles defense? Because I can tell you they're good, and I can give you all those numbers because that's correct, right? But then you look at who they played, and they played Washington week 1. They played Atlanta, who's been flat out garbage this year, week 2. Detroit week 3, and then the Jets last week. To the point where, I mean, no wonder nobody has run on them, right? I mean, it's that would be like what Adrian Peterson, Devontae Freeman, Kerryon Johnson, and then Le'Veon Bell is just a name because he can't do anything on the Jets. They don't have anything going for them. That's not really a hard schedule at all. I skipped Green Bay in there because I think Aaron Jones is significant, and that's a pretty decent offense, right? So for me, it's how good really are they? Are they going to get away from the run? No, they'll try Cook, and if Cook can get it going, for sure they'll keep running. But if they don't, and the defense is real, at least stopping the run, then yeah, you have to love Kirk Cousins. Just who do you pick every time? Because this is the same dilemma I have every week with Kirk Cousins. Is it Diggs? Is it Thielen? Where are we going? Thielen came up questionable. I think he plays. I don't know. If that's the case, then yeah, you can go right back here. You can go right back here, and I think that's okay.
I agree with you. I mean, once again, there's too much talent there. They haven't faced the level of talent in Cooks essentially this year based on those matchups. But I mean, I will say this is the fact that when you look at this type of scheme defensively, it's still impressive.
Sure.
So I mean, it's nothing that I'm saying is gonna make me say, you know what, you can't play Cook because of that. But I just want to say, be cognizant because obviously, as we know, on a week-to-week level in the NFL, things change as far as game plans, as far as schemes in the game. And one thing to note here is Ronald Darby and Maddox are, the top corners for the Eagles who have struggled significantly this year. They have been getting torched. Both of them are on the injured list right now. And if they're also not going to be able to play, it's like, okay, now we're bringing even more of down the depth chart of corners that have come in,
right,
which I don't think can handle Diggs and Thielen. Now, here's the thing. In the passing game, I feel like it's one of those things where last week they had to get it going. It was like a non-negotiable because of the culture, because of the camaraderie of the team. They still fed Cooks, and Cooks got his by essentially the passing game. I mean, that's what saved his day was all those receptions and then, with the checkdowns. This week, though, I think they'll try to establish the run, but it's like you said, if they can't get it going, I can see Cousins coming out and firing and throwing more than what we've seen in previous weeks, which I think is in a good situation. Diggs right now is 2% projected to be owned. I like that. I feel like there's too much upside. There's too much talent there for him, and the matchup is great for him to be not being rostered and to be taken advantage of in this situation. So I like that from that standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm there with you. This game also proves to be a little bit more competitive than a couple of their other games, right? They won week 1, 28-12, where Kirk Cousins passed 10 times. Remember last week against the Giants, they won 28-10, where they really didn't need to do much. Yeah, Kirk Cousins had 300 yards, but he passed just 27 times, right? They beat Oakland 34-14. He only passed 21 times. If this can stay close, which obviously Vegas projects this to be close, then yeah, he could probably get to 30-plus pass attempts. If that's the case, yeah, you have to like Kirk Cousins to either Thielen or Diggs. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
And then for the Eagles side, do we see any type of play here as far as Wentz, as far as Ertz? I mean, do we see anything maybe out of Alshon? I know Deshaun Jackson's still going to be out. So do we see anything from the Eagles side, or do we like the Vikings defense here?
I think the Vikings defense is just too good, flat out. I think they're just a force, and they're at home too. I mean, it's going to be a tough time for Wentz and company to get there. Also, who do you like as far as upside is concerned, right? Ertz, he's been okay. He's been serviceable, but he hasn't had one of those big games yet, right? Not even close to 100-yard game yet. And last year he had, it feels like a ton of them with a ton of catches, PPR everything. But this year, I mean, when there's a double, and he can't do anything about it. So it's not really Alshon either for me. I'm not a huge Alshon guy. I think he's a great real-life receiver. Outside of that, not really. And then obviously Deshaun Jackson not playing hurts them a ton to stretch the field. So I don't know. I kind of see like a stagnant Eagles offense this week, and the matchup doesn't get much harder than what they have. So no real Eagles for me.
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like there's other plays in different areas that I want to attack. It's like you said, Vikings defense, pretty solid, pretty stout, and they're going to be at home. It's going to be a tough environment for the Eagles. It's going to be a tough environment for them to really try to gain some momentum. They don't necessarily have the best running game to do that, to really at least, situate themselves and keep things stabilized. So, yeah, as far as that, I like the Vikings D. I feel like I'll have a certain percentage of them in my Millie entries. Next game, Saints at Jaguars. Man, I love this game for one reason. I'm gonna talk about it. Jacksonville's 1.5-point favorites, 43 over under. Listen, D.D. Westbrook is the play this week.
Are you kidding me? Where are you guys getting? So I saw it in YouTube chat. Where are you getting this from?
Whoa, listen. The Saints are incredible on the outsides of the wide receivers' presence, okay? They shut down on the outsides. Where they struggle the most is the slot. The majority of snaps and routes that D.D. Westbrook runs is in the slot, okay? Now, let me just tell you, in the middle of the field is where they're so vulnerable. And I'm telling you right now, a lot of people are talking about Shark this week. The play is D.D. He is very cheap. And also, listen to this. He has sub 2% ownership right now. And I mean, we can go through the game logs of what the Saints have done in the slot. I mean, they've gotten torched, especially Chris Godwin this past week. Caught 7 passes across the middle off 9 targets, 125 receiving yards. And I think he scored 2 touchdowns. I think he scored a late one, too, as well. But, I mean, this is a Saints defense that if you want their weakness, it's in the slot. And I love D.D. Westbrook this week. Please tell me I'm wrong, but I'm sold on it already.
I mean, I don't have – I have him. I do have exposure to him. He's just nowhere near a top receiver for me. I think there's guys that I just like a little bit more. Here's the thing, and I think the answer might be yes to this. Here's the question for you. Can D.D. West get you 20-plus fantasy points today or this week?
He can.
I think the answer might be yes. I think you're right.
I think he can.
How likely? I don't know, but I think he definitely can. All right, fair enough. I'm not there, so I guess you're totally right. They get torched in the slot. D.D. is obviously there. He does get the targets too, and everyone's looking at DJ Shark and what he's done. But I mean, Westbrook has I want to say just as much targets throughout the passing game too. Right, 11 targets last week, 6, 9, 5, 6. Like that's respectable every week. I wish the upside to have 100-yard games was probably there. I think he only had 1 last year too, across pretty much the entire season. So I wish the upside was a little bit just higher than for him. But sure, I get it. If you like Westbrook that much, I assume you like Gardner Minshew then? Or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I think on DraftKings, Gardner Minshew is somewhat interesting. Now, it's difficult to say because, I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks that I do like. But I think at his price point, you can definitely go that way. But here's the thing. I'm so focused on D.D. because the New Orleans Saints against slot receivers, they're second in receptions per game. They've given up 6.5 receptions. They've given up the most yards per game to slots this entire year at 110 yards per game they're giving up to the slot. They've given up the most touchdowns to the slot, and they're giving up 22 points per game, fantasy points per game to the slot. It's like,
jeez.
and D.D. Westbrook, he's the price of Trey Quinn almost on FanDuel. And I mean, and he's low on DraftKings as well. It's like he's not being looked at. And I mean, if this is a nugget that I'm trying to just show, I feel like this is obviously if he goes off, then it's nice because if you have Minshew, I mean, you're pairing it up with him, and that's great. But I think that this is one of those games where we see definitely a kind of a shootout. But I see a lot of emphasis being on Shark, and I just seen D.D. having a field day.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, it's respectable. If you're wanting a game stack, I guess on the other side, any one of Kamara or Michael Thomas, right? All right, fair enough, dude. I wasn't here, but I'm warming up to it. Okay, fair enough. I think I can get behind this.
Leonard Fournette, he right now is projected to be the highest owned player on FanDuel and the second highest owned player on DraftKings. Now, listen, volume is everything when it comes to the running back position, and this man, I think, is proving to us that he is second to Christian McCaffrey in the amount of volume that he's getting as a running back. And I think what's great is we're seeing him get a lot of pass catching opportunities. So Leonard Fournette, is it worth it rostering even with this chalk?
I think so. I really do think so. I think so it's still a good matchup on the ground too, right? And listen, when you're getting almost 30 touches a game, brother, I'm going right to you every single week as long as you have a decent matchup, right? As long as you don't face probably the best defense in the league. And this week, you're definitely about it. You're at home. When you're a favorite, you love it. So everything check marks. Everything checks the boxes, right? Essentially, when you want to go heavy on a running back, you get more. You want pretty much all the carries, the best game script. You want involvement in the passing game, 3 down back. You want them to be favorites. You want them at home. You have everything going for Fournette. When that's the case, then yeah, sign me up. And still 6,700, very worth it in my opinion.
All right, next game, 48 over under. Oh, this is another game I want to talk about. I'm so excited. Baltimore 11-point favorites at home against the Bengals. My man Mark Ingram is not being found to be owned this week. It's just driving me insane because this doesn't make any sense. Okay, he's 7,500 on FanDuel, but yet no one wants to give him love. I mean, please tell me that this is not a dream matchup for the running game of the Ravens.
I mean, I feel like it's a dream matchup everywhere. That's the problem.
Everywhere.
Right? Everywhere. Cincinnati's so bad. So, yeah, it could be in the running game, could be in the passing game. It could be Mark Andrews. It could be Brown. It could be whoever you want, really. I know some of these guys are questionable heading into Sunday, but I think they pretty much all play. If that's the case, anytime you play a team like this, it's who can score the most. Any position can score, right? It could be the tight end, it could be the receivers, it could be the running back, it could be the backup running back. They allow the world to pretty much every position, and when that's the case, I hate relying on just like, can my guy be the one to fall into the end zone? To where I do like this team, but I probably will get this wrong if I try to guess who's going to score and have the big days here. I feel like everyone can score. That's not my only issue.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I think Lamar Jackson's a great play this week. I think this is a bounce back week as well. I mean, this Cincinnati defense is just way too vulnerable, and I think this is a great opportunity for Lamar Jackson to run the ball. And I think that what we saw last week with Kyle Murray, almost having 100 yards rushing, I think this is just going to speak volumes to what Lamar Jackson could do. I feel like Lamar Jackson's a little bit more talented than Murray right now, so I'm looking forward to what this presents. But the big thing is Mark Ingram, man. It just doesn't make sense to me that Mark Ingram, and it's not even about a volume situation, because I know he's going to get 15, 16 carries probably. But then again, they could just run and get this game over with, especially if they have a lead after halftime. So I could see Mark Ingram even eating it up even more. But, I mean, we're talking about a Bengals defense that they've given up 41.1 points per game, fantasy points per game this year to running backs. It's the most in the league. I mean, it's almost doubled essentially half the rest of the league. And on top of that, they're giving up 8 receptions and 10 targets a game to the running back position as well. So Mark Ingram, I mean, Manny, please tell me you're on board with this.
I like it. I just like more running backs too. Like I if I could fit him in, I'll gladly fit him in. I think if you're just talking about raw projection, he's definitely in the top 8 for me as far as raw projection, right? He gets about 20 touches a game. 20 touches. If you get 20 touches against Cincinnati, great. If you somehow are winning by so much, you continue to get touches, by all means, be my guest. And yeah, of course, when they score a ton, and they are projected to score a ton this week, he is the goal line back too. So like everything's setting up to be great for him. But like I said, it's also great for Andrews. It's also great for all the receivers. It's great for Lamar Jackson. It's great for everyone. So if you think all the touchdowns go to Mark Ingram, then yeah, that by all means, you lock that guy. But if you think they spread out and kind of everyone gets a piece, then it's going to be hard to trust any one of these guys, especially in tournaments. But I do agree with you. It's a phenomenal spot for Ingram. Yeah.
Question, because this happened last week to me, and sure. I made a huge mistake. I had so much of David Johnson, and at the last minute, 5 minutes before kickoff, I said, you know what? Williams is out for the Packers. Aaron Jones is the same price point. This could be a great pivot for me because I know how much ownership is going to Johnson, and I think that in this situation, this is a good opportunity to pivot. And I didn't do it as much as I should have. I still benefited from it though. However, though, same situation here. Leonard Fournette, same price point almost on FanDuel. If you're in a situation where you have Leonard Fournette, or let's say Chris Carson, who are in the same type of tier as far as projections, do you see a situation where if there's so much ownership on Fournette, could you pivot to Ingram?
I think so. Yeah, definitely. Okay. It could also very well happen where you're right. Dede gets the bulk of the work. Maybe DJ Shark gets something, but Minshew passes it in instead of it being Fournette, even though Fournette sees 20 touches. You're seeing Fournette might get 25 touches. Ingram might see 20, right? But they're almost the same price, virtually the same price. But the ownership is not even close, what you mentioned. I think the ownership gap is so significant that you probably take Ingram in that case. But it's not to say that Fournette's a bad play by any means. I just think both are good. One just has significantly less ownership. And I think in tournaments, you probably take that guy most of the time.
All right, next game, 4 o'clock games on the East Coast, 1 o'clock on the West Coast. the 49ers, the undefeated 49ers at St. Louis, at St. Louis, excuse me. Wow, I'm going old school. LA, Los Angeles Rams, 3-point favorites, 50.5 over under. I mean, Manny, I have a certain situation about this game, but talk to us. Give us the insight and the gems to this game.
Yeah, it's a San Fran defense that has played probably like a top 3 defense so far this season, right? To where their numbers are right there with New England, Minnesota, Buffalo, Chicago, and are they the real deal? I mean, if you're still undefeated, I think you're doing something right. So I think Jared Goff might have his hands full. The whole Gurley thing, I think we'll just wait to see what happens, right, on Sunday. But if he doesn't go, that's a piece that they'll be down, and if that's the case, I can probably see Goff throwing it a little bit more. So, kind of surprising, but I think I align myself with Vegas to where I think this might be a shootout. I think the 50.5 total is I wouldn't say accurate, but I'm right along those lines. And if that's the case, I like Goff a ton more than I do the running game. You know exactly where you want to be with these guys, right? Maybe if Cooks plays, then sure. Robert Woods and Kupp are obviously a thing for me too. So, and I think there's I wouldn't say easy pairings too, but Kittle on the other side, if you wanted a game stack, I think in a great spot too. I kind of sneakily really, really like this game a ton, to the point where this might be my favorite game of the week. And I didn't expect that, considering San Fran has played really good defense.
All right, so let's talk about this real quick, because I mean, obviously we've seen this defense of the 49ers. But they've played the Bucs, the Bengals, the Steelers, the Browns.
Sure.
Okay, they haven't played essentially an offense like the Rams that, in my opinion, has one of the best passing offenses in the NFL. Agreed. You have 3 weapons at wideout that can essentially kill you in any direction, from the slot or from the outsides, and Woods, Cooks, and Kupp. So let me ask you this. Do we see the fall down from the fall down to earth from the 49ers defense this week, as far as how good Goff plays at home and the weapons that they have? Do we see a situation where the Rams essentially blow them out?
I don't know if they blow them out, but I do think they put up points against these guys. And I think you're right. It goes back to a point we made earlier. Some of these numbers, they look great on the surface, but who really have you played, and how challenged have you been these first 5 weeks, right? I think San Fran might fall in that category, at least defensively, to where you're good, your numbers are good, but you haven't really played anyone, right? And that's the thing for me. Now they'll face probably one of the best offenses in the league, and I don't think they can hold them. If that's the case, then I think it happens through the passing game, not the running game, given the situation the Rams are going through there. And again, if you wanted to run it back, I think a pretty clear path. So I sneakily really, really like the Rams. I have Goff as a top 3 quarterback this week.
Yeah, I think the Rams passing game, I think, is not only very, very high projected for me, but I love running it back with Kittle as well. I can see the Rams being up, and then they have to go to the passing game. I don't see the 49ers running on the Rams like they did the Browns or the Bengals. This front four for the Rams is pretty stout when it comes to the rush D. So, I mean, essentially, if you're going to hurt the Rams, it's got to be in the air. Right. It's got to be in the passing game. So it's going to have to be Garoppolo. It's going to have to be Kittle. I don't know if Goodwin or Pettis or any of these wide receivers are talented enough to really cause any trouble to that secondary. But I think this is a game where the Rams defense steps up and we see the Rams kind of show out here. And I guess we'll have to see what happens. But I feel like you said, the Rams passing offense is very key here. And I don't know. I feel like it's going a little bit overlooked.
Yeah, agreed. All the Rams I can get.
Next game, we got 3 more to go. Tennessee at Denver.
Ooh.
What? You don't like this game?
I don't like it at all.
Yo, this game has gems in it.
No, it does not.
What? Yo, hold on.
Who on earth do you like from this game? This game is a 40 total, Chris.
Yo, first off, if there's one person I like, it's from the running game. It's from the running game. I mean, it's not even getting looked at, so that's why I like it even more. Titans at Broncos, guys. Denver's 2.5 favorites. 40.5 over under, like my man Manny said. Yo, you don't like this game?
Oh, do you like Lindsey or Henry? I can't imagine you like the passing game of any team.
Yo, it's Derrick Henry all day.
Really?
All day. What?
I mean, I guess. Yo, sure.
Oh, my God. I'm freaking out right now.
Wait. So, like, you rather play Henry over, I don't know, Fournette or Carson or, I don't know. I think Kamara's in a fine spot. Le'Veon Bell maybe. Like, Really? I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, all right. So here's the thing:
Mhm.
is and just hear me out, okay?
Sure.
Denver has been very weak against the run, and they've been very vulnerable in a lot of instances. Now, hear me out. Just hear me out.
Yep.
They're giving up 10 targets a game to running backs as well, 8 catches per game. And the thing is they're ninth in the league fantasy points per game as far as the running back position. Now, here's why I like Henry. This game bodes well for him because it's going to be an environment where I don't think the passing game can do anything against Denver. I think they're going to have to run and run heavy. Henry's a workhorse for this offense. Okay, he's averaging 20 carries per game. And in my opinion, from what I see here, given the fact that it's a close spread, I feel like the ground and pound is what's going to benefit Tennessee in this game. And to be honest with you, I like Tennessee to win this game. So in reality, based on who I see winning, I really like Henry. He's a low price point. No one's looking at him whatsoever. How could you not kind of like this, given the fact that he is a workhorse? You know he's going to get the touches, and that defense is somewhat vulnerable, especially with Chubb now out.
I mean, okay, so for me, it's Derrick Henry on the road. Derrick Henry is a dog. Derrick Henry against Denver in that stadium. I mean, it's just me. The only thing Derrick Henry has going for him is the volume. But what if I told you Kenyon Drake this week was going to have, and he's not, but what if I told you Drake was going to have 20 carries this week? Would you play him? Probably not, because it's the Dolphins and they're bad and it's just not a good team. I mean, Tennessee to me isn't a good team. I at least maybe to you they are. I have no idea. But even 20 carries on this team, like he's just I think he's such an average running back with a lot of volume. That's all it is. And I guess 3.5 yards per carry, 3.7.
And what if Fournette too, who's a running back with just a lot of volume?
Well, wait, but Fournette's way better than Derrick Henry. You know what I mean? It's not even close. I don't know. Sure, play him. I'm not here because I'm just not a big fan of this team or this player at all. But sure, I guess I've definitely seen worse plays. I understand the matchup thing, but I don't know. Like I have no interest in Henry really.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm just looking at a defense that has struggled with tackling, linebackers and defensive backs. The defensive line just doesn't get off blocks. I mean, it's a very vulnerable situation. So, I mean, it's a contrarian play. But hey, if we always go chalk plays, then I guess we don't have any insight then on games.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just thinking outside the box, being a little bit different. Next game, Falcons Cardinals. Oh my God, I mean, I don't know how much I've heard this week about this game, Manny. 51.5 over under. Atlanta 2.5 point favorites. Go ahead and talk because I've heard a lot and I can't wait to hear what you say.
It's a game that's projected. So I hate these. You know why? I feel like Arizona's always such a trap, man. They play so fast. They do supposedly, right? But like they never spread. They never stretch the field. So it's just annoying, dude. Like, what if I told you this guy's gonna pass 40 times a game, but you look at average depth of target and it's just like 5 yards. Like it's counterintuitive. Yeah, you're gonna pass 40 times, but you're going to pass 40 times 5 yards or less. Like, I'm just not interested in you, dude. To the point where if we're not playing PPR sites, how does anyone play Arizona ever? Like, they're the worst. It's horrible. So I'd like to think this might be the spot that they could finally bounce back because Atlanta's so bad. It's not even funny. But if you trust Vegas, Atlanta being favored is like a huge question mark. So I feel like there could be a lot of points finally for once in an Arizona game, but it's again, it's not a spot I feel I'm in love with outside of Matt Ryan, Julio. If you want to run it back with Kirk, sure. If you think Hooper's a strong tight end, I think he's decent. And then, yeah, but I don't want all of this game, how everyone's projecting to have it right now. I feel like all these guys are chalk, and it's kind of annoying.
Well, can we talk about the Arizona side? I mean, how do we feel about Kyle Murray?
I mean, okay, so it only can get better, right? It definitely can't get worse. The guy, again, he 32 attempts, 43 attempts, 40 attempts, and he's thrown 300 yards twice. One was barely because he got 308 in garbage time, right? And he went into overtime against Detroit, but he just doesn't do much. He just doesn't do it. He's had 3 games this season where he did not score a passing touchdown. Like, I like stacking. I like pairing, and he's so hard to pair with because he doesn't throw it downfield, and that's my only thing. I hope Atlanta fixes that because they are a pretty bad defense. If that's the case, then yeah, Kyler Murray is a strong play. It's just frustrating watching those games. So if you roster Kyler Murray, which I think he's a fine play. Just don't watch the game because he's so frustrating to watch.
So can we just say then this is a great play, Christian Kirk?
I think Kirk is my favorite out of the bunch. Yes.
Thank you. What? That's what I'm. See, now we could agree. The Falcons D has been torched by slot wide receivers.
Yeah.
I think they're top 2 in the league as far as how bad they are. And in every single matchup this year, they've gotten torched. And this is going to be a prime situation for Kirk because we're going to see Fitzgerald majority on the outside, but when he goes inside, he'll benefit from that. But I think Kirk is a great option because he's not being looked at as compared to everyone else. David Johnson, way too owned. Fitzgerald, way too owned. This is probably one of the only guys outside of, I think Austin Hooper is in a great spot. I think Austin Hooper, obviously we know how bad they are against tight ends, but also why is he not getting looked at as much as 4 other tight ends? There's 4 other tight ends that are projected to be higher owned than him right now. And I feel like he has the best spot.
For sure. And I do have him as a top 3 tight end this week. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. Probably second behind Kittle, I think. Yeah.
All right. We're going to go into the last game. You guys, don't forget, after this, Manny has his Twitch where he breaks down and does a fantastic job. The guy's a stud when it comes to Fantasy Cruncher, when it comes to really just being a teacher of the game to people. The last game we have here, Dallas, New York Jets. We'll make it quick. Any love, anything? Le'Veon Bell's highly owned. What do we got?
Yeah, another one of those volume guys, right? Even on a terrible team, sees a ton of targets, almost double-digit targets per game in the passing game. Still gets his 15 to 20 carries per game. It's just they've always had a garbage. Well, because of the injuries, right? They always had a tough time moving the football, but Darnold being back obviously helps a ton. And when that's the case, we saw what he did the first weeks, right? And yeah, that's how I'm projecting him. I don't know. I think Dallas, I wouldn't say overrated because they're definitely not overrated, but definitely not a team I'm scared of whatsoever, even though this is the New York Jets, right? I still think they play somewhat decent here. And I like that it's in New York, not in Dallas. Yeah, I could see a big game from Le'Veon, especially with that volume. So Le'Veon, probably my favorite play. Zeke is all right, but again, I think he's taking a backseat to some of the other guys on the slate, some better value. Le'Veon, probably my favorite out of the entire game.
How do you feel about Michael Gallup?
Oh my goodness, man! This guy. Listen. I've given in. I've been playing him. My last week's lineup. I think I scored 300 something. It was with Gallup. So I'm not gonna say no to Gallup. But he's not my favorite play, not even close. So take it for what it's worth.
Okay. I just want to talk about how vulnerable this Jets secondary is. One of the worst in the leagues. They suffer significantly against wide receiver twos in all passing offenses. So I feel like this is a game where Michael Gallup not getting the exposure as compared to Amari Cooper, especially coming off that hot week last week. I think you made a great point with Ezekiel Elliott. Right now, Love is going a lot of other places, and it's not so much to Zeke. They're going more of a more balanced, not going run heavy. I think this is a sneak play for Gallup. In my opinion, he's low priced, a lot of upside, and I'm just happy to hear that he's gone into the pool of good players for Manny to go ahead and be rostered. So, that's good to know. You guys, thank you for joining us. Manny, it was a pleasure. As you know, both ways, Yahoo Sports, Daily Fantasy, use the code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, get $30 in rewards points. That gets you 3 entries into the Million Baller. And then also, the NFL promo code is NFL Strategy. Get 50% off your first month at awesemo.com. Go to the NFL section. Look at the videos. It breaks everything out. You guys also, Manny Laura, where can we find you at? Tell the people where we can go ahead and see Manny Laura.
Yeah, so on Twitter, you can follow me at @mlaura, like my name. I am part of Fantasy Cruncher, so it's all the Fantasy Cruncher you guys see right here on awesemo.com. You will get from me. I teach you guys every single day or as much as I can on twitch.tv/mlaura, which I'll do right now after this show. And then a Sunday stream every morning, Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. Probably the biggest stream of the week heading into what now is week 6. So, that's it.
All right, Manny. Thank you, man. You guys, thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care. Be safe. Good luck on Sunday. And we'll see you guys next week.